Hello and welcome to our video series which sees me, creative head editor Amanda Nottage, chatting to leading Wella creatives from across the UK. I'm going to be delving into their career paths, their inspirations, their workspaces and anything else that might pop up along the way. Now joining me today is Sassoon UK Colour Director and Wella Colour Creative, Mr. Edward Darley. Edward,
hello. Good morning.
Lovely to have you here with us.
Very nice to be here.
Do relax. This will all be painless, I promise.
I hope so.
Now, I can't have you here chatting about colour without asking you first and foremost, what was it about hair and colour in particular that screamed to a young Edward, this is for me?
I suppose it didn't really scream, if I'm honest.
No. Okay.
From that.
It dragged?
I wasn't one of those people who wanted to be a hairdresser. I don't come from a family of hairdressers. It's sort of quite different. And if I'm really honest, I ended up leaving school, trying to find something to do. My first choice didn't really work out.
What was your first choice?
I was going to go into social care.
Okay.
There was some big weekend going on at the time and I wanted some money to go out, and a friend worked in a hairdresser's and it was like, oh, if you just go there, they needed someone to shampoo, sort of give it a go, you know, it'll be all right for a couple of weeks, get the money to go out, and that was that. And obviously that's over 30 years ago now, so that's how it happened.
Okay, so you're in there, you're shampooing. Yeah. At what point did it start kind of vibing with you? I
suppose as soon as I got there, really.
Okay.
I suppose it's like a lot of people, I'm sure, say to you, it's meeting suddenly finding like-minded people, and it didn't really feel like a job. And I know that sounds a bit corny, but it didn't. And literally quite early on, I went into colour, so I just found it more exciting. Okay,
what was it about colour, do you remember?
I think it was the people. The people were a bit madder. Do you know what I mean? I think it was that. I think cutting hair, and I don't think it's like that now, felt serious, where colour didn't feel as serious.
Okay.
I don't mean when I say that, I don't mean that there wasn't as much emphasis put on it or as much training into it, or they just seemed to have a nicer time.
You joined Sassoon 92, am I right?
92,
in Leeds.
Yeah.
So how long had you been in hair at that point, and how did you end up?
I was one of them really. I was probably one of them really horrible people who literally got the training in the place I was and left, which is you know what I mean, which is horrible looking back. Like I say, the salon was sort of very Sassoon. It was sort of like a mini Sassoon, and it was a bit like, well, if you're doing all this, why don't you just go work for the real thing, and just give that a try? And at the time, I thought it was going to be so hard to do. Right. And it was hard once you started, I'm not belittling that, but I thought, you know, I didn't think I'd get in. I thought there'd be hundreds and hundreds of people going. And now, all these years later, I'm doing some interviews tomorrow for people, actually. Right. And you realise that what probably got me in was, one, I wanted to do colour, which was very, you know, which is a huge thing now, but was completely niche back then in the early 90s. And two, I wanted to be in a regional out of London salon. Right. So, you know, I knew that was one of the things looking back that got me there.
How would you encapsulate the Sassoon eye when it comes to colour? Is there a particular approach, methodology that? Yeah,
I think there is a methodology to it, and I think that I think anyone has a methodology when colouring hair. You know, whether ours is right and someone else's is wrong, or vice versa, that's by the by. I think it's for Sassoon, I think people see us as a rules brand. I think a lot of in the industry and out of the industry, you can't do this, you can't do that, you have to do it like this, you have to do it like that. And that's not really the case. I think more you realise that you're in there, that's how you're trained, right? Because it has a methodology to go with it and that type of thing. But it's working that methodology into what you do. Okay. I mean, I would always say to the people I'm training and my team that you would be, if you can prove there's a reason for doing it and why you would do it, then do it. If there is no proof, it's just a stupid whim, then it's a waste of time, probably.
Fair enough. Who would you say across those 30 odd years now has been your greatest mentor?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, you so that I suppose we were really, really lucky when you look at people in the industry that are finished now or are still in the industry. I mean, I've worked with so many people. Obviously, it goes without saying Annie Humphreys, sort of from there, which is I believe is called the Queen of Colour. So
for a reason.
For a reason. So there was her, but I think I was really, really lucky to have the right people at the right time.
Okay.
I mean, we in my very, very early days, I worked with a girl called Carrie Wright, who basically just does freelance hairdressing now, but she was the right person to teach me the classics. Then we had a guy called Christian Gardner, who unfortunately is no longer with us, and he was mad, like just proper mad. If anyone out there that who knows him or knew him would know what I'm talking about, and he was the right person at that point. I suppose, like I say, I think I'm really lucky that I was just at the right place at the right time.
And what was Annie like, the Queen of Colour?
She was, I mean, obviously,
alongside her.
She was scary.
Yes.
I'm not going to say that she wasn't scary, but that's because how people built her up.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose the pressure that she was under at that time, which now I can sort of feel it. Do I feel that someone would say I'm scary? I don't know. But yeah, the pressure that she was under. But yeah, it was a big thing for somebody from London coming up north to the north. And I suppose as a northern salon, we all felt we had to really prove ourselves. We weren't. There was always a feeling that, and it's more by us, as now somebody who works in London, as more by us that, we weren't as good as London, which sounds silly now. And I believe that's one of the things that's changed hugely in, I think regional hairdressing, for want of a better word, is so much stronger than it was.
What do you think makes a fantastic educator today?
I think you have to be honest.
Okay.
I think you have to. I think you've got to drop the ego.
Okay.
And I think everyone can be accused of having one. Don't get me wrong. I think you've got to drop that. It's not about you. It's about them. It's. I suppose it's been adaptable. Is what it's all about. It's been adaptable to working with someone who might not want to be taught but thinks they do. And working with someone who just wants to get as much information out of you as more than you're probably going to get in a day or a week. Or I suppose it's making it interesting. Mm-hmm. It's knowing what you're there for. Whether it might be for Sassoon, so you're there to launch the collection or talk about some courses that we're doing, or it's for Wella and you're there to get the product information across. But trying to do it in an interesting way, in a way that works for what the audience is in that sort of sense.
Can you think of a time when you've been on stage, and we all know things can happen.
But that's the exciting thing.
Exactly. Can you think of a time when just the worst thing happened and you had to style it out? How did you manage it?
I can't think of one for myself.
Okay.
If I'm really honest. One of the most amazing things that I've ever seen, and it's a long, long time ago, and I'm sure she wouldn't mind me saying, but the way that it worked in them days, let's say there'd be 7 colourists going on stage at Sassoon, and we would have 7 models to use from there, and we would all pick which model was going to go to, whatever. And what Annie was really, really good at is she would usually take the harder model. Okay. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Whether it's, when I say harder, I don't necessarily mean personality. It would be what was on the hair and so on and so forth. And she took this particular model and tried to do something which probably on hindsight we all knew wasn't really going to work. She went on, did it, obviously then something else happens in the show and we take the models back on finished, and it obviously hadn't worked. So she went back on to this audience of about 1,000 people, went back on and showed that it hadn't worked.
Wow.
And showed, explained why it hadn't and how she was pushing it too far maybe and so on. And she probably got the biggest round of applause than anyone. So that's the thing that's probably stuck with me in that sort of sense.
Well, I guess it's that idea of being authentic, isn't it? And you'll have learned something from that experience as well.
Exactly. That, when you're doing live colour in those situations, things aren't going to work. And I think, that's when people respect you for doing it properly. We've all done it where you've tried to do it with conditioner or you've tried to do it with something else, but people know when it's real.
I know. If you had one key lesson to impart to a new hairdresser coming into the industry that could potentially change their lives going forward, what do you think that one lesson would be?
That you've got to be open to new ideas.
Right.
You've got to be open to new ideas, and you can't just. I know I've talked about people who've gone before me a lot, and people from that we work with, but you learn from whether it's someone who's been around a long time or it's someone who's just started, and somebody who's just beginning their career. And I think what's harder as you've been doing it longer is you sort of lose that idea of not trying, that's not the word I'm looking for. You lose that idea of sort of pushing the boundaries a little bit more, because you are scared of it looking ugly. You're scared of a lot more, whereas when you first start, you're not scared at all.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think you can really learn from that.
Okay, so follow-up question to that one. What do you do to make sure you keep pushing yourself? Do you do things to scare yourself?
I think you just work with the team.
Right.
I think you get out there and do it. You try different things. Sometimes it's going to work. You're not, going back to the presenting thing, you become less scared. You have to be a little bit scared and a little bit nervous to get the adrenaline there. But you become less scared, so you do try different things.
Okay.
Because you're not worrying about how you're going to sound, how it's going to look, how that's sort of going to happen. So you have to sort of push it as far as you can, and it's good to have a bit of danger.
Absolutely. Now, with Sassoon, particularly the seasonal collections, they are always so meticulously and expertly referenced. There is such a backstory. Where do you go as part of the team? How does it all come about when it comes to sitting down and thinking, right, this season, this is what we're going to do?
I suppose what your questions your answers in the question, sorry, it's team, because yes, we live it the whole time we're putting it together. There's sort of like quite a long lead up time of about four to 6 months. Wow. And we all sort of live it at the time. But I suppose what I've always said, it's not like we decide what we're going to do on Tuesday next week. You know what I mean? It's sort of it's a very organic process, and you're sort of living it as we go. And sometimes a collection will be very much what you're about personally, and sometimes it might not be. It'll be another member of the team, but you sort of come into it and put your slant on it. I suppose my strengths, I would say, in that idea, I'm quite visual. It's more that type of thing. So film and that type, those ideas, art would take you in that direction.
Can you think of
I'm not so much into music.
Right.
So when it's a very musical feeling, that's not
so much for you.
Not so much. And I suppose it's knowing your strengths and knowing your weaknesses.
Can you think of a particular collection that felt very you, that you particularly chimed with?
My father was what you call a gamekeeper, which is a type of farmer, if you like. Not a lot of blood sports, not very PC these days. And I suppose many years ago we had a collection called Gilded Youth, which was very much that sort of idea of hunting, shooting, fishing.
Yes,
and I
lots of tweed.
I suppose that was a huge influence.
That was beautiful.
But then all of them, I suppose you try and get your own little bit in there each time.
Mr. Darley, what would you say excites you about colour right now?
I think what's really exciting about hair colour at this moment in time is it's not really trend driven.
No.
And I think that's really exciting. I think if I look back through my time in the industry, if you look at sort of that early 90s, it was really natural. There people weren't really having their hair coloured from that. It seems a bit bizarre to sort of fall into it at that stage, but people weren't really doing it. Then it went very sort of, like I say, trend driven, and I suppose it isn't. I mean, obviously you've got all the ombre and all that side. I suppose there's two very definite things, isn't there? You've got all the ombre going on, all that natural, all that type of thing, which is, if you're into it, that's great. And then there's also the other side where it is actually really colourful at the moment. Fantastic. There's very two different things. And then I suppose also it's the struggle of, as product companies get better and better and products get stronger and stronger, it's trying to, they become a bit more foolproof. So it's trying to make you come up with ideas yourself that makes it more important to you or personal to you.
Now, you've mentioned earlier that you have some interviews to do. So tell us, Edward Darley, who are you looking for For the next generation of Sassoon.
For the next generation for
hairdresser.
Sassoon. So we're looking for people who want to be part of it.
Yep.
We're looking for people who want a career. I think what Sassoon is really good about, whether you stay or you don't stay in the long term, you go off, you're really looking for career-minded hairdressers. I mean, we've got people who just want to come in, do great work, go home, have a great life. Don't get me wrong, but you're also looking for people who want to be the next generation of Sassoon, who want to be the new managers, creative directors, want to be the new Mark, myself, whoever, from there. And that's what we hopefully will find tomorrow.
Fingers crossed. Edward Darley, thank you very much for joining me today.
Cool.